just giving people money isn't the answer either. I would rather help put people in positions to make money for themselves. Put yourself on a plan where you're putting a little away every paycheck so you could have a nice little nest egg when it's all said and done.
Hey, it's Angela Yee, your host of a new show by Acorns, where we talk about untold money stories from some of the most inspiring people in the world. Right now, I'm very excited to introduce somebody who I admire personally and like as a human being. We have Lala Anthony. Hey, Lala.
Hey, what's going on? How are you?
Now, I have always loved your business sense and just the whole way that your career has evolved. So I want to start with the beginning. What is the earliest memory that you have about money?
About money? The earliest memory I have about money is wanting more and being in a position where I didn't ever want to have to rely on someone for money, which I think started me being so self-sufficient and independent because I hated having to feel like I needed to rely on somebody for money. And that started at a really, really young age. I saw my mom, we had moved and she was working and I didn't want to put the pressure on her to have to ask her for money all the time or say that I needed certain things. So I really wanted to be able to provide for myself. So I started working at a really young age to be able to provide, for myself.
A lot of these conversations about money start at home. Now, I know personally, my parents didn't talk about money except for complaining about the bills or my dad telling my mom she was spending too much money and her hiding things before she could bring them in the house. So what was it like for you at home? Was it talk at the dinner table? Did your mom discuss bills with you or anything?
I don't really remember having conversations about money. I don't remember us talking about money. I just knew that my mom was working at that time and bills were coming and they were getting paid. And that's what I remember. But I just know that when it came to anything extra, I just didn't want to put that pressure on her to say, oh, I want to get this, I want to get that. So I wanted to have a way to get those things on my own.
How does that shape your relationship with money as far as how you deal with Cayenne? How do you talk about money with him?
I definitely talk about money with Cayenne. I want him to be understanding of money, about saving your money. We talk about people who made a lot of money and lost it all. And what did they do wrong? How do you make this much money and then have nothing to show for it? Especially with him, being an incredible student and an incredible athlete and putting himself in a position to hopefully one day make a decent amount of money. It's important to me that he knows how to manage money and all about it. I talk to him about investing. I talked to him about all of that stuff.
Now, you did say earlier how you started working at a young age and you started making money pretty young. We all know you started off working at a radio station in Atlanta. So when did you start getting paid for that? It started off as an internship, if I'm not mistaken?
I started as an intern and I wasn't getting paid. Internships, for the most part, are free. Not all of them, but this one was free. I was working for Shaka Zulu and not getting paid, but I was starting to get some of the perks that come with just being at the radio station every day. Tickets to concerts, free t-shirts, just hanging out there and things that I wasn't getting paid for, but I was experiencing part of a lifestyle I had never really seen before, like going to the clubs and not waiting in line and, all of that kind of stuff. But then after I actually started being an on-air personality with Ludacris, that's when I started getting paid.
Did you tell them, okay, I want to get a real job where I'm getting paid and get out of this internship? Did they propose it to you? How did that happen?
No, I never said anything. I was just so grateful to be in the situation and gaining the knowledge and experience that I was getting as being an intern. I never wanted to rock the boat or ruffle any feathers. I was like, when my time comes, it's going to come. I mean, when you love what you do, you should want to do it and be willing to do it, for free. I love being on the radio. I love just that environment. So I didn't want to jeopardize that in any way. But finally, when an opportunity came for me to be on air, then it only made sense that I started getting paid.
And did you negotiate?
Not a lot. It wasn't a lot, but it was something.
Hey, when you go from nothing to something, it matters. And it also makes you feel a little more confident, I would think.
Absolutely. More confident and walking in with a different bop to your walk. It's just a little bit different. And looking back now, I'm like, I don't even know how I survived off that little bit of money that we were making. But when you have to make it work, you make it work. I mean, I remember moving into my first apartment and having roommates, 3 roommates. And it was 1 or 2 bedrooms with a bunch of people living there. You just figure it out. You just do what you got to do.
I always feel like I had some of the most fun back then when I didn't have a lot of money and we were all trying to figure it out.
I agree. I agree. I think that, you were just living and just enjoying the moment, and money wasn't at the center of everything. You found other ways to just enjoy life and what was going on.
Did you even think about negotiating when you were offered a job and a salary? Did it pop into your head to say, okay, they're offering me this, maybe I should ask for a little more? Or were you just like, I'll take it?
So I just took it for the first time. And then when Luda was leaving radio and decided to pursue a career as a rapper, I knew that, my time there was up because we were kind of like a group on the radio. And I knew once he left, the show was going to kind of fall apart. So I started sending my air check tape out to all these radio stations across the country. And I remember getting the call from Los Angeles, and they said on the phone, they were like, what are you currently making? This was kind of it was before people weren't asking to talk to like your lawyers and stuff at that time. So like, what are you making? And I remember in that moment, I just had like a 2-second pause, and I was like, there's no way I could tell these people. I don't know. I was making like $16,000 a year, something crazy. I was like, there's no way I can tell them that. So I was like, in my mind, I'm like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna double it. And I thought I was doing something great. I was like, oh, I'm making like $32,000 a year, thinking like I'm throwing out this crazy, insane number. And they were like, oh, well, we can definitely double that and maybe even more. And that happened in one phone call. I went from making $18,000 to like, it was maybe like 65 or 70,000. And I was just like, this is crazy. I didn't know what to do at that point. I was
That's
like,
a
I don't
lot.
know. That's a big jump. I was like, I don't know how I pulled this off. I don't know if they're going to figure out I wasn't being honest. Like, I didn't know what was going to happen. But then I did moved to Los Angeles, and that's when I started being on the radio in LA.
So at this point now, you're kind of balling out a little bit. So what was one of the first big things that you bought?
I definitely, when I got to LA, the first thing I got, they put me up in corporate housing first.
Wow.
So I had a little time. Yeah, it was a crazy situation. I was like, oh my God, I felt like Cinderella, when she like is just coming into everything. It was a top market. I was coming from Atlanta, which is a great market, but LA is still considered, a top radio market. And I was still a teenager at that time. It was just like an incredible moment. But I remember getting a car when I was in LA, and that was like my first, nothing crazy. I don't even remember what it was, but nothing crazy, maybe a Mazda or something. And I was just happy about having a car and really being out there on my own, no roommates or anything like that.
Then you ended up at MTV as a VJ. How did that happen?
So one day when I was on the radio in LA, I came in, I never forget this day. I came in and the receptionist was like, somebody from MTV called here looking for you. I'm like, why would they call the receptionist? Like, that's just weird. She's like, well, here's the number, call back. So I called back, and they were like, yeah, we want to kind of bring you in. We hear you on the radio. We love your energy. We just want to kind of meet with you. I was like, cool. But I remembered at that time, a lot of times people on the radio were doing MTV kind of one-offs, like a little segment or something like that. So I came in and they were like, wow, like your energy, your look is definitely something that we're looking for. They were definitely trying to diversify MTV at that time. And they made me kind of audition, and I did a bunch of auditions. And then one day they just say, hey, are you willing to move to New York to be, the next host of Direct Effect? And I was like, yeah, I'll do it. To me, the natural transition from radio is television. So I was like, I'll do it. And I moved there, and in a short amount of time, I went from hosting Direct Effect with DJ Clue back then, and then also at the same time hosting TRL, which was like the big show at MTV. Like, everyone was trying to get to TRL because it was a live show, and they were very selective on who was on, that show. And they allowed me to be, one of the new hosts of TRL once Carson Daly left and everything. And it was just a really huge moment for my career.
No, that is definitely a huge moment for all of those things to fall into place the way that they did for you. And what about your brand? Because at this point, you have to be thinking about what type of endorsements am I doing? Who am I affiliating myself with? And you also have to make sure you protect your brand. So how did you decide what type of collaborations you wanted to do?
At that time, I didn't really understand the whole brand thing. I just knew people took to me because I was myself, whether that was on the radio or on television. So I was like, just continue to be genuine and be you. Like, they hired you because they love you. Don't change. Don't let this shit go to your head. Don't do anything like that. So I just continued to be me. And I think the branding part of it came because people just felt like what you see is what you get with her. She's authentic, she's real, she's genuine. And I was able to get a lot of kind of deals and jobs just by being that way.
It's interesting because people know you as an entrepreneur also. So what was the first venture into entrepreneurship that you had?
I was doing like capsule collections of like makeup or different things like that. That was kind of the first thing. Then I had a clothing line for a while, which was like the first big kind of venture into the entrepreneurial space. Did really well with that.
That
And
was
then
Fifth and Mercer, right? I remember.
Monster started, then it became the Lala Anthony collection, and that's still available. That's been in like every store from Macy's to Nordstrom to Lord and Taylor to everything. So that was exciting. And then I wanted to really dip into a world that I was super passionate about. It's something that I love. So currently now I have a Nala, which is my hair care line. It started with the Power Potion, which are 100% rice water complex drops, and we're expanding from there. But I partner with an amazing partner, and that business has been really great for me.
I do think it's important to do things that you're passionate about and that you care about. Clearly, beauty is something that you're passionate about, and hair. And so how involved have you been? Because sometimes people put their face on a product or they, team up with somebody, but they're not sure about the ins and outs of the business. Now, for you, how important is it for you to actually know all the details?
It's important. I mean, anytime you put your name behind something, it's important. And a lot of times, this is what I let my brand know as well. It's like, if anything goes wrong, I'm going to be the one that's on the front line for that, not anybody else. I'm going to be the one that's responsible for everything. Everything's going to be my fault. So I have to be involved every step of the way. It's all going to come back on me. And sometimes a lot of people within your brand or people working with you don't understand that. It's like, everyone has their own agendas, but not realizing when you're the face of something, you're going to catch all the heat, good and bad. So you have to be very mindful of what you put your name and your time behind. And you got to be really involved because you don't want something to mess up and then you don't even know it happened. And next thing you know, you're trending or everyone's hating on you. And you're like, I don't even know what I did. I don't even know the post that went up. They did that on their own. People don't care about that at that point.
You're so modest all the time, but let's not also forget that you're a New York Times bestselling author, okay? So what made you decide that it was time to write books when you started doing that?
I thought it was really therapeutic to write things down. I just decided even recently that I'm going to get back to like writing in a journal. And I think so much creativity comes out when you just write things down. And a lot of people don't realize that. So the book process was like therapy. You're talking about your life, things you went through, how it made you feel. And you realize it really was a form of therapy. And the book, The Love Playbook, went #1 on the New York Times bestsellers list, which was so exciting that people really cared enough to hear what I had to say about love and relationships and everything like that. And then the second book, the Power Playbook, did really well. And that was just about, finding your passion and your dream and putting the tools in place to become successful. So I'm glad I had two great books out there that I feel like really, really help people. But at the end of the day, it was therapeutic for me to just talk about these things.
I happen to have the Power Playbook right here.
Power Playbook.
Actually, I have both books, but since we're talking about business, right, and entrepreneurship and money and investing, I wanted to talk about something you said in this book. You talk about the power of failing and going on auditions. Obviously, nobody gets all the auditions that they go on. You said you fail about 90% of the time. So how do you stay motivated when maybe you're going up for a role that you really want and it just doesn't happen?
Yeah, I mean, I'm human, so it is discouraging sometimes, but I keep telling myself, like, what's meant for you, will be for you. And you got to believe that. And if you believe, people will eventually start believing as well. I mean, when I transitioned to acting, nobody thought that it was going to happen for me. It's like, you're a radio host, you're a TV host. You can't go from MTV to acting. Like, it doesn't happen. And I was told no so many times. And every time I would walk in, it's like, oh, that's the girl from MTV or Lala from MTV. I couldn't shake the MTV part. They just wanted to see me as that. And it took a long time to finally break those walls down. But I was persistent, and it's something that I knew, I really, really wanted. And then I started seeing, great results from my hard work. But when I talk about like what's meant for you is for you, I remember I had auditioned and tested for this show Ballers that was on HBO. And I remember after I tested, the actor I tested with, he called me and he was like, I just want to be the first one to say congratulations. you killed it. Like, this job is yours, but act excited when they tell you. I'm like, cool. So I'm just flying high all day. And that night I get a call from my agent and she's like, they decided to go another direction. And I'm like, but the guy told me I had the job, like the actor. She's like, well, they saw some people after you and someone else they thought was better. And I was just that one crushed me. I was so crushed. And I remember just laying in my bed crying, like, why am I doing this? Like, this isn't ever going to happen. Like, I'm getting so close every time, but I can't like seal the deal. And then it wasn't even maybe a week later that I booked Power, and Power really changed my life. So it's like things happen the way they're supposed to. It's God's plan, not our plan. So it's just like a prime example of how I could have just gave up at that moment because I really felt like I wanted to. And then I got the show that ultimately changed my entire life.
And, even just the fact that they considered you for that role, because sometimes you go on auditions and you might not get that part, but the people in the room might see you and remember you for something else. And that happens all the time.
That happens all the time. Even with Power, when I first started on Power, Lakeisha was just a recurring role. She was just popping in once in a while. She wasn't a main character or anything like that. And that's why they say, every role is important in TV and film. Like, no role is considered a small role. And I was like, I'm just going to do the best I can at this. And eventually from 2 episodes, it became 4 episodes. It became every single episode. It became Billboard in Times Square. It just kept growing. So it's like, you never know how things are going to turn out. So at first it was like, oh, it's just a small role, whatever. It's not this big deal. And look what it became for me.
And you know what I wanted to talk to you about too? Investing, right? Do you remember any of your early investments? I remember, like, for myself, deciding to open up an IRA or do a 401k, and then even dabbling into the stock market and things like that. But are those things that you're like, okay, I'm into it, I want to learn more about it, or you're already well-versed?
No, I'm a student of the game. I always want to learn more. My first investing for myself was when I bought a house in LA. It was the first thing I ever purchased for myself. And I still have that house in LA. And I'm so proud of it because I know the hard work it took for me to get the house. And now looking at how much the value has increased over all these years, the neighborhood and everything. And it's like, oh, I spent this and now it's worth this. I'm just really proud of it because I was at a time where I was just getting like more of my money together and saying, okay, what can I do with this? And I was like, am I ready to buy a house? Like, me buy a house? That just sounds crazy. And I bought it, and it's just been, an incredible investment for me, even to this day. And you're talking, what, 10, 11, now 12 years ago.
Wow. So I know that value has shot up.
Yeah, shot up. When that West Hollywood area, that's kind of crazy over there.
And I wanted to ask you too, I remember we had this conversation when you had your reality show, and you felt like you had to step away from doing Lala's full court life because perhaps you weren't being taken seriously as an actor. And so how hard was it for you? Did you have, and I know you talk about fear in your Power Playbook, but was that something that was scary for you to do where you were making money from this, people were watching, but you had to sacrifice that in order to try to get something bigger to happen?
Yeah, it was fearful because it was the unknown. Like with the reality stuff, it was a short shot. And reality TV, you can make a lot of money. And I was producing Full Court Life as well as starring in it. So I was getting, double checks from that as a producer and the star of it. And also it was such a great catalyst and platform for my family and friends to also, get on TV and establish brands and make deals for themselves. So I was like, I'm helping everybody, through this show. But then I just had to say, it's not something I'm so passionate about anymore. I don't want to share everything about my life or create these scenarios where I'm mad at this one and this just for great television. I really just wanted to do the acting thing. And everyone was like, are you sure? Like, that's taking such a risk. Like, you're so great at this. And I was like, I'm just going to try. Like, I'm sure I said in the Power Playbook, you got to bet on yourself. Like, you got to bet on yourself first. And that's exactly, what I did. And thankfully for me, it paid off.
And who taught you about business? Because I think when we're in entertainment, we're doing things like you said, you were in radio, then you became a VJ, MTV called you, and things just kind of started rolling from there. But did you have anybody that kind of taught you about business? I know a lot of things you end up learning yourself, but was there anybody that was like, okay, you need to do this, or you had a business manager? When did those things start coming into place?
Yeah, I mean, I had business managers along the way, but I had great mentors. Like in the beginning of my career, Shaka Zulu, always took me under his wing. That's Ludacris's manager who kind of discovered myself and Chris, to this day, my mentor, one of my closest friends. So I always would lean on him for advice as my career continued. 50 became a huge advocate in my corner and someone I could turn to all the time for business advice. You learn by making mistakes. I've had business managers that I've had to get rid of because I didn't like how they were doing things or numbers weren't adding up. And it's like, I should have paid more attention. How did that go over my head? So you live and you learn, you take all these lessons and just try to continue to get better. But I would always look at people's careers that I thought were great or that I wanted to have success like them and say, hey, who do you guys use in in the business side? Who's your accountant? Who's your this? Like, go to people that I thought did a great job and then try to, see who the people were behind some of their success as well.
And how do you determine and stay true to your value? Because sometimes we really have to advocate for ourselves. And then going into something like acting, I don't know how you negotiate in the beginning when you're brand new. Sometimes people look at you and think that you're making millions of dollars from these roles. And they're like, Lala is rich, rich. But how do you determine your value when it comes to what roles you decide to take?
Well, you got to be realistic. If you're just starting out, then you don't really have a quote to work off of. It takes a while to build to where you have a quote. So Power, that's why I said changed my life. Power put me in a position where I have a quote. Like, this is what she gets paid every episode. And any show after that would have to either match my quote, or more. So it took a while to establish what that quote was. But also, if I love a project or if something I want to do, again, I don't do it for money. I do it because I love it. So it's like, this is an independent project. We only have however much money to give you. If it's a great role and a great cast and something I want to be a part of, I'm not going to not take it because of the money. And I think for me, throughout my whole career, that's been a consistent theme. Like, I never took jobs because of money. I took jobs because I love them. I took jobs because I wanted to work with certain people. And the money came as a result of that. I hear people all day in my world today, like, I'm not taking that. They only offering this. And they'll throw away like a great acting opportunity, a great job because of the pay. I just can't do that. That's just not how I do business. And I found so many great things came from just doing things that I really loved and not basing it on, what the paycheck was.
You're also really known for being gracious and kind to people. And so how does that equate to being successful? Because sometimes people feel like to be a woman, you have to be a bitch in order to get respect. But for you, you've done the opposite.
I think being kind to people, is a way of respect because it's showing that you respect them and you expect the same in return. I remember, I feel like it was Will Packer told me one time, he's like, I'm in a position in my life where I want to work with people I like. Like, I want to work with people I like. And that always stuck with me. Like, be a nice person, be a person that people want to work with and be around. And so many more opportunities will come your way. If you're coming in complaining about everything, late, mad, attitude, this, who wants to be around that? There's too, especially in the acting space and anything, TV, radio, there's too many choices out there to have to deal with somebody that's that difficult. You can find another radio personality with a great personality. You can find another TV host. You can find another girl that fits the description of the character. Like, it's too easy to be replaced. So it's like, you have to be humble and gracious. And also, I think when you don't come from what your life has become, there's a level of graciousness that comes with it. Because every day I'm already outliving a dream I ever had, because I never thought this would be my life right now and the success I've had. So I always remind myself of that. Like, I'm already doing more than I've ever dreamed of. So I'm very grateful because of that.
How did having a family change how you think about money also?
It changed a lot because I wouldn't feel okay if I'm this super successful person and my family, is struggling. That's never great for me. But I also had to understand that just giving people money isn't the answer either. I would rather help put people in positions to make money for themselves or to follow a career that they've been wanting to do, maybe introduce them to somebody in that field or anything like that. I realized that was the better way instead of just like, here you go, here you go, here you go, which is where a lot of people go wrong and go broke quickly because they got 100 people on a salary every month or, an allowance every month. For me, it's like, what do you want to do? Give me a business plan, or I can introduce you to this person. Hopefully I can get you a job doing this. I'm more, about that. For me, the person I'm going to always take care of is my mom. Like, I'm always going to take care of my mom. But anyone else who's able and willing, like, what do you want to do? How can we put you in a position to become successful, on your own?
All right. So I know we only have a few minutes left. So I want to do these rapid fire questions with you. So I'll ask you a question and you just quickly, give an answer. Okay. I know we discussed this kind of, but what did you spend your first big check on?
A car.
What did you spend your last big check on?
Renovations to the LA house that I talked about. It was time to do some renovations.
Okay. And what is the best money move you've ever made?
Saving my money is the best move I've ever made. Living within my means, not trying to live above my means has been great for me.
What is the greatest money lesson that you've learned?
Just as quick as you can get it is just as quick as it can go. Like, nothing lasts forever if you're without strategic planning and being careful with it.
As far as people giving you advice, what's the best money advice anyone's ever given you?
I always say, like, I always feel like, the people who have the most money, have the least stuff, meaning everything is not for show. Like, they're wearing a t-shirt and jeans and they're stacking their billions while, other people is like 100 chains, 100 this, 100 that, which is nothing wrong with that. I love all of that stuff. I have a lot of that stuff, but just being more mindful about what you spend your money on. A lot of times we spend our money on wanting to look like we have money as opposed to really having money.
And what's the worst money advice you've ever received?
That you're going to die anyway, so just spend what you can and just spend it all. I mean, I have a son I have to make sure is taken care of, and, whatever happens to me, I want to make sure Cayenne is always good. But, people are like, oh, you can't take money to the grave, so you might as well just spend it. I mean, I still hear that a lot.
I hear that all the time. What's a money mistake that you learned the hard way?
Yeah, that things don't hold value. Buying certain pieces, a car, or certain pieces of jewelry that as soon as you buy it, the value goes down. Like, understanding what holds value or grows in value and spending money on that type of stuff. There's nothing wrong with having nice things, but you buy something for $50,000, and as soon as you pull off the lot, it's down to like $25,000. You got to be mindful of that stuff and figure out better ways to invest.
And when do you feel the most empowered by money?
I feel the most empowered by money when I realize that I've set up my life to be in a comfortable place where I don't have to continuously worry about money, and I can help those who have issues in that department. And more importantly, I know that, God forbid, if anything was to happen to me, that my son will be taken care of.
And what is your favorite thing to spend money on?
My son. My son. My son. That's the just giving back to your kid, and your kid being able to experience things in their life that you never got to experience is like a great, great feeling.
And what's your least favorite thing to spend money on?
Plane tickets, car services, Ubers, like that stuff just adds up. When you look at what you spend in Ubers and car services per month, you're like, how the heck did this happen? Like, I feel like those bills just get really high really quickly.
My whole bill is like lift. Every time I leave, I'm like, what am I doing?
Exactly.
And what would your money advice be to 20-year-old little Lala?
That I would just tell myself, you don't have to quote unquote look the part. Let the talent speak for itself. You don't have to have the chain and the this just to look the part, but you live in an apartment with 3 guys because you can't even afford, a studio or something like that. Just being more mindful with what I was spending my money on at that time.
And last but not least, what is your best money advice to someone on their come up?
Definitely. Like, I would say save your money, but live your life. Like, you have these people that are so tight when it comes to money. They're not even living their life. You work that hard to be able to enjoy it. So make sure you enjoy it and you live your life, but just put yourself on a plan where you're putting a little away every paycheck so you could have a nice little nest egg when it's all said and done. But live like you're not working to not live. Like, take that trip when, go out with your friends, go to dinner, and not, I can't do this because then I'm not going to be able to save my $100 just paycheck. Like, be able to live like you work so that you can live a certain life.
And so when it comes to a guy and his finances now, what's important to you? Like, do you feel like you need to have somebody that is on your level or above, or does it matter to you? Or because you're doing well, you're okay, finances don't matter at all?
Yeah, I was never one that got caught up in finances, despite who I ended up marrying, which might seem like, I just never was. I'm more about how a person makes me feel, the connection I have with them. But I do want someone to have enough going on for themselves to be successful in their own right, whatever that is. You don't want somebody who's just miserable because they don't have any money and they're complaining about, life all the time. I want somebody to have passion and purpose, but at the end of the day, matching what I have or being able to just ball out 24/7, that's never been important to me.
And I think one thing that is scary about breakups and divorce is stability because you're used to having those two incomes coming in. So how is that for you mentally, knowing that, okay, now it's just me?
Yeah, no, that's been an adjustment, just telling yourself, okay, I don't just always have this other person to say, "Ooh, if anything goes wrong, they can take care of it." That's been an adjustment, but I'm learning to be on my own, and it's empowering, and it's putting me in even more of a power position. It makes me feel more confident about myself. It makes me feel like, hey, if I could do this, I could do anything. So it's been a transition, but I've figured it out.
All right, guys, look up her net worth. You'll see she's doing just fine. Lala, thank you so much for joining me and having this conversation about money. We really do appreciate you. And when you have some time and you're in New York, I already told you we have a plan, okay?
All right, I'm excited for the plan. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lala.
Right.
I'm Angela Yee, and thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you hit me up on Twitter, on Instagram @Acorns, and let me know who you'd like me to talk to next about one of my favorite topics, money. All right, now let's get to the business. Listen up. These conversations do not reflect the views of Acorns. The material is only informational. It's not investment advice. It's not a recommendation, an offer, or sale of securities. Remember that investing involves risk, which includes the loss of principal. We always tell you that. Investment advisory services offered by Acorns Advisors, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Brokerage services are provided to clients of Acorns by Acorns Securities, LLC, an SEC-registered broker-dealer and member at FINRA SIPC. For more information, visit acorns.com.